In this video, you're going to learn how to get input from the user into your Node.js application, and this is going to be essential for creating anything meaningful. So think about the Notes application. If I'm the user and I'm trying to use the Notes app to add a new note as an example, I need to provide some information about that new note, such as a title and a body. The same would be true if I'm trying to use this Notes application to remove a note. I have 15 different notes. I need to provide some information about which note I want to remove. Now, for the moment, we're going to handle getting input from the user via command line arguments. Later on in the class, as we get into Node.js with web servers, you'll learn how to get input into your Node application from a client such as a browser. For now, though, let's go ahead and get started with the fundamentals of getting input into your app with command line arguments. Let's go ahead and get started in the terminal. So down below, I'm going to use clear to clear the terminal output. And all we're going to do is run our script through the node command with one slight modification. So node space app.js, we know exactly what this does. We get our your notes message and our blue success message. Let's go ahead and run that same command. This time though, after we're done, we're going to type another space followed by a value. So for the moment, let's just use something like our first name. I'll type mine in, Andrew. Now we're going to run the program again, and what do we get? The program still works. We get the exact same output. The only difference is that we've now provided additional information that our program could choose to use to do something dynamic, like print a greeting with that name inside of the message that prints. Now the question is, where exactly do we access those command line arguments? And the answer is that they're on that process global variable we explored in section 2. In section 2, if you remember, we took a little time to illustrate some of the differences between JavaScript in the browser and JavaScript running in Node.js. I talked about how the browser has window and document, and how Node has global and process. Well, on process, there is a property, and that's where we can access all of the command line arguments passed in to our app. Let's start by dumping them to the console. So right here, console.log process. Remember, process is a big object with dozens of different methods and properties. We're looking for one specific one. It's called argv, and that's in all lowercase. Argv stands for argument vector, and in the case of Node.js, it's just an array that contains all of the arguments provided. Right here, I'm going to save app.js, just dumping all of the arguments to the console. Then we're going to rerun our script with Andrew appended. So right here, I'm going to rerun the script, and what do I get? I get my 2 pieces of output that were expected, and I get my 1 new array. This is the value for argv, and what do we have? We have 3 strings inside of there. Now there are 3 strings, and 2 are always provided. The first one is the path to the Node.js executable on your machine. Now this is obviously going to be different for each and every user. The second is the path to our app.js file. Once again, this path is also going to be slightly different depending on where exactly the file lives on your machine, but both of them should be paths to those 2 locations. The third is the value that we actually provided. Right here, we have the string Andrew, which means that we could take advantage of that in our program to do something meaningful. Let's go ahead and extract the individual value out of that array. So process.argv is the array. We want to grab an item from the array by its index. So I'll use JavaScript's bracket notation to get that done. And we put the index right inside, where 0 is the first one, 1 would be the second one, and 2 would be the third item. Right here, this is exactly what we want. Now, if I were to save this script and rerun things, we wouldn't get this long array with a lot of useless information. We just get our 1 piece of useful information. We have the string Andrew, and we could now use that to customize our program. Now, in the case of the Notes application, we're going to use this first value after the script name to actually determine what action we want to take. This will be known as our command. Am I trying to add a note? Am I trying to read a note or remove a note? What sort of action am I trying to take when running the program? So for example, right here, node space app.js space, I could do something like add, which would let the program know my intention is to add a new note. Right here, I can see that add now prints, and I could use this to run the right code. Let's see what that would look like. So up above, I'm going to remove all of the code except for our two require calls. Those are going to stay as we'll continue to use them. And all we're going to do for the moment is create a variable called command, and we're going to get its value from what we just printed to the console. That's process.argv, grabbing the third item by index. Now we could actually use an if statement to conditionally run some code. If the user who's running the app provided add, we could run the code necessary to add a note. Otherwise, we won't try to add a note. Right here, if. We'll set up our condition and the code block to run if that condition passes, and we're just going to check if command equals, using triple equality, the string add. If it does, we know the user is trying to add a new note, and we could run the code necessary to create the note and save it to our data store. For the moment, we're just going to console.log, a little message letting us know this code actually ran. I'll say something like adding note. Now if I save the program and rerun, what do I get? I get adding note printing, which is fantastic. Now we could also run this with a different command, for example, node space app.js space. Let's go ahead and use something like remove to remove a note. If I run this, you'll notice I'm not getting any output because I haven't set up the program to actually do anything when that's the provided command value. I could always address that by setting up an else if statement, checking if command equals the string right here, remove. If it does equal remove, that's great. We'll go ahead and run all of the code to get the removal done. Console.log, right here, removing note as a temporary placeholder. Now we could save the program, we could rerun things again, and there we go. We now support that second command, allowing users a way to add notes and to remove notes. From here, let's figure out how to get even more information for each command. So knowing that the user is trying to add or remove a note is a good start, but if someone is trying to add a note, I need the note's title and I need the body. If someone is trying to remove a note, I need the title, as an example, of the note that should be removed. So how are we going to get that done? Well, once again, we're going to start with the command we've been using throughout this section. So right here, node app.js add. Then we're going to provide command line options like you've probably seen with other command line tools. So hyphen title could be where we set the title. I'll set that equal to, inside of double quotes, the following. This is my title. I could run the program, and now we're passing in even more information. It might not look like it, but if we were to dump argv to the console, once again, we would see it. Console.log, process.argv, just dumping the entire array. I'll rerun the program exactly as we had it with title set up, and now I'm getting as the third argument add, which we already had, and as the fourth one, I am getting title. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that it's not something that gets parsed for us. We have the exact text typed out over here, as we do here, minus the double quotes. We need to now add some code to manually parse that. We have to figure out, for example, if title was actually provided. If we do see that title was provided, we have to get the value. Now, sure, we could go ahead and write all of the code necessary to parse those arguments. It would result in maybe 12 of the most uninteresting videos in this course, where we didn't talk about Node.js at all, but just talked about string parsing. Now, we're not going to do that, and for a couple very good reasons. One, we would have to write, test, and maintain all of this code, and that code doesn't do anything unique. Parsing command line arguments is not unique to our application, so it would be best to look for an NPM package that can take care of that for us so we can get back to the task of writing what does make our application interesting, which is in this case, its ability to manage your notes. So in the next video, we're going to look at how we can use a tool to parse process.argv, making it much easier to set up our arguments for our Node.js applications. I'm excited to get to that, and that video will include a challenge, so let's go ahead and jump right in.